Well, I'm looking forward to today's discussion. Today I have Josh Keefe, who is a science educator who has a very interesting hypothesis about the flat earth. I have looked forward to this for 3 we favor a little bit, don't
Yeah. You look so familiar too. I keep thinking I know you from.
we? I don't. What are you? What are you? 40s?
Yeah, I'll be 40 this summer.
Well, I remember when I was turned 40.
Yeah.
Boy, it's, and you're from Dalton, right?
Yeah,
No,
you remind me of the Kellers.
Mike.
One of they were brothers. They worked together. They did construction.
Yeah.
We worked for them at one point. One of the Matt Keller's dad, Matt, passed away, and then there was his uncle. We met him actually at a gathering. His uncle that we worked with showed up at one of the meetups wanting to meet me and had no clue that I was the one that worked with him and knew him and everything.
Is that right?
I was like, how cool is that? Because they're from the Cleveland area, I know.
I think that's the Mike Keller.
Yeah.
They do some iron work.
Yeah,
I know who you're talking about. He's about my height.
Yeah. And
Are you? Now you're from Ringo, Georgia.
yeah, most of my life, yeah.
Well, I've got a real good friend of mine that lives there, Ross Andrews. He's an architect. His office is downtown Ringo, Georgia, and he is a great guy.
Wow.
Do you go downtown much?
Not actually. Since I moved out to more in the country, it's not as often. But yeah, I go down there. We walk.
Yeah, they got a nice bridge now and everything, don't they?
Yeah, it's pretty.
Well, I got a speeding ticket there a couple years
Yeah,
ago.
that's what they're known for. Is that like you can pull out of a parking lot without a seatbelt, and you
Yeah.
instantly it's like ticket.
Yeah, and then you get that lawyer that's downtown, and he gets you out of it.
Yeah.
Crazy. But that speeding tickets will hurt a downtown. They wonder why downtowns don't thrive. Get the police from stopping everybody from going 2 miles an hour over.
Yeah.
That'd help. Because I avoid the downtowns a lot of times.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I prefer being away from all the people now. With the way things are so crazy, it's nice just to have space and property. That seems to be where everybody's going, is find a place to just take care of your family and almost not be reclusive, but be away from all the madness that goes with being in a city.
I've reading a book here a while back about there was a mass exodus from the downtowns and going out to more rural areas, especially with the internet, being able to do a lot of work. Of course, if you can work from home now, but that's not really, are you into that working from home, or is that hard for you to get used to?
It's hard. We did it during the pandemic. All the teachers, of course, were going and they were working from their computers, and it's not the same. There's something about that connection and being in person with people that's different. I feel like you can reach them, and online's great. I've been blessed to reach millions of people worldwide. But there's just a connection to being in person that's something different. When you go and you meet, it's kind of like the beloved son, the Messiah, going around with people, and there's the love, and that light being shared. It's more personal. So I prefer that, but I'm looking forward to whatever this next chapter is as I venture off, try to find another job or career.
Are you going to stay in the professional arena?
I'd like to.
Or educational arena?
I would like to stay in that realm. I'd like to be a teacher, an educator. I just have this peaceful feeling since I rejected my contract that there's something even maybe bigger. I don't know. Not maybe bigger on like a money aspect, but like as far as reach, whether the Father has me go into ministry full time. I really don't know what it's going to be, but I just feel this peace about it. As soon as I hit reject on the contract, I just had this peace like, you did the right thing. This is going to work out. And I have no clue, but when it happens, I'll be like, okay, that's what it is. But at this moment, I have no clue what the future holds.
That took a lot of nerve, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And fear tries to get the best of you. But I've been in this battlefield with these children. And this year, my role changed from being a science teacher to now I'm a special education teacher in the science classroom. So I'm still in the science classroom, which is my expertise. And I taught it differently. Like when I taught evolution, I do it from a creation aspect, and we challenge the evidence. We look at the evidence that they give us, and we challenge it. And I show my kids the intelligent design aspect, the proofs of creation that we have, all of these things that we have. And I challenge them, and they seem to come alive with excitement, as opposed to me saying, you're random and you came from an amoeba that turned into some sea sponge, and now you're here and there's no meaning to all of this. Now be excited about this and learn. And it just removes them of their excitement. It takes away their, it endangers their salvation. People become atheists instantly, and you're seeing that happen everywhere. And they teach evolution like it's a fact. And so, me being in that classroom now with other teachers, it's different and it's been really hard, but it's motivated me to a level I haven't had in a long time, because I feel like they're handing these children murder weapons when they're saying, here, this is true, here's proof. Kids are going to believe it. They're not fully into proving all things, the real scientific method that believers go by, proving all things. They're not really into that. So it becomes just believe all things, repeat all things, pass this test. And I love these educators. They're good people, but they're misled and they're misleading these children, just like I did many years ago when I first started without knowing. I was ignorant in that when I was going up and teaching the Coriolis effect with a globe, thinking that was wisdom that I'm teaching these kids. I wasn't even looking at the biblical model of creation. And so it's one of those things that I want to, maybe that's the avenue I have to go, is to fight that system that we're doing currently. Because I can't do it again. And that's one of the reasons I didn't sign my contract, is they were going to put me back in that situation again. And it's hard to be a part of that, even handing out papers and saying, here, take this paper or whatever. If I'm handing them false information, I just feel I can't do it. It's against my beliefs to do that. So it's been tough. It's been a tough past month or so, because that's been our unit, is evolution. That's our final unit. And so it's been a battlefield, honestly.
So they're really teaching more evolution than a God creation.
Yeah, they don't even mention intelligent design. They don't mention there's a creator, that life is so complex that we can't even create life. We can't create it. Nobody can create life. We can modify it, we can alter it, but I can give the greatest scientific minds a cell, leak the ingredients out of the cell, and say, okay, put it back together and make it alive, and they can't do it with the given ingredients. But they expect us to believe that water and lightning, somehow evolution, which it's not a creator, it's just changed over time, made life, made genetic code, made something that could replicate, and had genetic code, which really, with code, anybody that works with computers, if something has code, it's been programmed by a programmer. It's got this computer programmer, it's got programs, it's got all these different things it does. But even a computer cannot replicate, it can't make another computer. It would die out. If we stop taking care of it, it's gone. But life isn't like that. It's so miraculous. When you start talking about it, I get passionate about the intelligent design aspects of creation, and it's what motivates me to want to stay in the classroom, because there's kids that they need that excitement. They need to see that there's another option, and you got to be kind about it. I'm not like, evolution is just debunked. It's bogus. You're dumb if you believe in it, like they are towards creationists. I try to use approach like
you'd be wrong. You'd be wrong on the opposite end.
Yeah,
because with science, it's like, aren't you supposed to? Isn't that the idea? Is to prove stuff? Isn't that the definition of science?
yeah. That's the exact definition.
Yeah.
And you look like a mad scientist when you really try to do that. You start mapping everything out. You start investigating. And I remember I had some miracles happen that set off this journey into investigating things deeper, like evolution, about 7 years ago. And it was the second set of miracles that happened in my life that were powerful, that I knew were 100% were miracles. And I was like, there's a creator. He's listening to me. I don't know why he's listening to me. I don't deserve it. But I'm going to prove that what he says is true. And so I start mapping out the timeline of Earth and evolution and all this stuff on my board. And I'm like, here's what they tell us, 4.5 billion years, or however many billions of years they want to give us. It's always changing. When did life begin? Okay. How many species do we have now? What's the possibility, and you factor in the mass extinctions and all that stuff, and you look at it with their timeline, and it's mind-blowingly fast. We would be having this conversation and growing tails or something. Like, we would be changing into a new species. You would have a new species every year from an existing species, and we just don't see that, because there's been billions of species. They say that most of them have gone extinct, and we don't have any set of complete dinosaur bones. And when you look up why, they say, well, a lot of them washed away. Washed away? What do you mean? Like some sort of flood came?
One washed away, but the other
washed them away. These things were massive. Some of these were as big as this table, and they didn't stay in the same spot. Like, did something larger than them drag them away? We don't really question these things. We just go, oh. And then we find out that a man discovered soft tissue on a dinosaur bone specimen, like soft tissue, like spongy, soft, and so did a female scientist. They found the same stuff around the same time. The guy that found it, he got fired working in California at a university. He was one of their lead people in that area. Find something, and they're like, you need to get your religion out of here. And he's like, this is just something I'm finding. It's not a religion. I'm finding something that proves that these things aren't millions of years old. They're more like thousands of years old. And so he's replicated that over and over and over, finding soft tissue and what look like blood cells and spongy tissues. And he can manipulate them and move them when you dissolve the bone. And that, to me, is mind-blowing. But then he did a cross-section of the bones and found blood clots in the bones, which indicates they drown because of the iron deposits in the bone cell, in the pores of the bone. So he said this indicates drowning. And they found that on all of the different continents of the world. So there was some sort of large flood, not an asteroid, most likely.
Would that go along with the Noah's Ark, the flood?
Yeah, like the flood, Noah's Ark. If you've ever read the Book of Enoch and heard about the giants, the Nephilim, how the world became so corrupt, a lot of it can be found in books like the Book of Enoch, where you hear directly what happened. Because I thought, they messed up in the garden, and then all of a sudden the world's corrupt so many years later. What's going on? Well, we were taught these things. These corrupt things were taught to mankind by these angels that were supposed to be looking out for us. They call them the fallen angels or watchers, but they were supposed to be looking out for us, and they didn't. They actually made a pact, an oath, to do the things that they did and corrupt mankind. And when you look at the oaths that they have today for secret societies, for the Jesuit oath, our Pope today is the first Jesuit Pope, allegedly. The oath that they take, just look up the Jesuit oath. This thing is creepy. It's like, here's what we're going to do to these people that are heretics, people like me that don't believe the creeds that they have and the things that they believe. It was a Jesuit that invented the Big Bang. The Big Bang Theory was invented by one of them. But it talks about some graphic things that I wouldn't mention just because it would censor whoever I'm, talking to about it. It's graphic stuff. But these oaths mimic the oath that the Watchers took in the Book of Enoch. They all agreed to corrupt the world and do it in a way that they all went down with the same punishment. So it wasn't just one of them, going down with the punishment. And then they passed that on to their offspring, which became the Nephilim or the giants. And those bones, who would know where those bones are other than the ones that left them behind, which their punishment was they had to fight to the death. And the angels or watchers had to watch them die. And so their bones will be everywhere. It'd been a slaughter, these things that have been corrupt in flesh. So that was part of their judgment. Then there was the flood. And so it's quite the history story getting to where we are now, where we all believe that we came from water, which where did the water come from? There was an explosion, but it made a ball in a vacuum covered with water. And a ball in a vacuum covered with water is not a good place to start life,
Yeah.
So
Seems like it put the fire out,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and
The
not that
Big
it's
Bang, yeah.
yeah, and not that it's just any ball covered with water. It's a ball moving hundreds of times faster than sound. So if you've ever watched a jet fly at and break the sound barrier, multiply that times like 288. Like this is like super fast speeds, and our water's sitting over here perfectly flat, stationary, and level. We can jump up in an airplane, fly anywhere we want to on this realm that we live in, and not have to ever account for curvature. I've flown to Australia and never once did that plane tip its nose down, but I landed upside down on a ball, and it was going over 500 miles an hour. And so that's 200,000 feet of curve an hour. Otherwise, we'll end up in space if it's there.
And so that's getting into the flat Earth theory.
Yeah, to the geocentric.
But back to the Nephilims.
Yeah.
Did the Bible say they were giants?
Yeah, it says they were giants in those days.
I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, there were giants in those days, and then after. So it talks about after, and the giants after were different. They weren't as big as the Nephilim, but when we hear about like Greek mythology, you have all these cultures worshiping these false gods. Why did they worship them? Why were they so devout? Well, that wisdom that they had was passed on. Things like Zeus, and you just think, oh, somebody made a good statue back then and everybody decided we're all going to worship this statue. This stuff is demonic in nature. We don't realize the demonic aspect of it. It's so spiritual why these people do the things they do and why we do the things we do, the customs that we have. We don't know why once a year we bring a tree into our house. Like, well, but you start reading the Bible, you start finding out, oh, that has to do with sun god worship and Tammuz and Nimrod and things that happened right after the flood because they found these tablets of stones that were left behind with carvings of wisdom from the fallen. The wisdom of the fallen was engraved. And so after the flood, these people find this stuff and then they go on, and then you have Nimrod and the whole Tower of Babel. They're trying to go to the firmament of heaven, trying to break through it. They knew it was there, so they're trying to go through it. They're building this
How
giant
did they
tower.
know it was there?
Because of the flood. They were terrified. I mean, you have to imagine the entire world. There was floodgates of heaven. It wasn't just rain causing the world to flood. There was, when you go back to Genesis 1, like this is what the truth had me go all the way back to Genesis 1 at creation. What was day 2 of creation spent making? He spent an entire day making one structure.
The firmament? The firmament.
Yeah, and I just glossed over that and thought atmosphere, clouds.
World, whatever.
And
Earth.
Yeah, it just seems like like a little side note, like, okay, firmament, that's clouds, that's
And then
air.
it goes on. It doesn't really describe the firmament, does it?
Yeah, not in the current day translations. There's some, like you find like the Jewish translations, it'll say God said, let there be a dome, let there be an expanse. But they knew of this and believed this as solid. And it says he set the stars and the sun and the moon inside the firmament. And so if that's the air that we're breathing, the atmosphere, there's stars in our atmosphere, and planes are going to be, navigating through these stars, but they're not, because this firmament is an expanse above us. And he spent that entire day making it, and it says there was waters that went up above the firmament and waters below it. And so when the flood happened, you look at the windows of heaven, it's like a sluice, one of those things where you could, have water, like almost like a dam sort of, and water would come out. And so literally you had 7 floodgates, 7 parts of the earth. When you read other books that talk about this, books that Christopher Columbus was quoting so that he could get funding to travel here. And the books he was quoting talked about the firmament being founded on water. There being far more land out there. So they didn't believe in an edge like this table has where you can fall off of an edge. They believed in a firmament structure, and they believed in more land out there. So they knew they weren't going to fall off of some sort of edge that they put in mainstream imagery.
Do you think Columbus was, he wasn't thinking, he was, at that time, did they think the earth was flat?
We're told that he believed in the globe and he was out to prove it. That's what I was taught, that when he went in a circle around this, you can go in a circle. If you had a magnetic north pole on the middle of this table, and I had a compass, and I just went in a circle and it was always pointing north, I can do that on a flat surface easily, and I have to hold the compass flat. Now, if it's a ball and I point it north, and I'm holding it flat, and then it's having to cut through the ball, but and I'm on the equator and I keep it pointed, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to take me in a circle. No matter flat surface or a ball, you can circumnavigate east to west. It's always going to take you in a circle. No matter, and even if you're right up at the North Pole, let's say you're standing at the North Pole, you're going in smaller circles. So flat surface or globe, it's the same exact principle. But Columbus got funding, quoting the book. I think it was it the Book of Ezra, Second Book of Ezra? It's one of those books that used to be in the King James Bible back in the 1600s. But he would quote that and quote those verses, and that's what helped get him funding to come here, because they're like, okay, there's more land. All right, go out there, So.
And he found it.
Yeah, he found it. Yeah, he found more land out there, and so it's interesting finding out what the ancients actually believed. And as early as the 1900s, they were teaching flat Earth in schools here in America. You just don't hear about it. You have to question people. We had a guy that interviewed a lady that was 105 or 4 years old, and she said that's what they taught her at one point, and then it just shifted and it changed, and they started
in the 1900s.
Yeah, early 1900s.
But now, the flat Earth was back when didn't they start thinking the Earth was? But prior to Socrates, the Earth was flat, and then they started talking about it being a sphere.
Yeah, it was theorized by a guy, Copernicus, everybody's familiar with. And this guy that was released after he died, you'd be ridiculed. Imagine everybody experiencing this flatness, the non-moving, environment.
It was just the opposite,
and then
right?
saying, we're on a ball moving hundreds of, thousands of miles per hour, 500,000 miles per hour, 66,600, ignore the triple sixes, around the sun. And it's tilted at 23.4 degrees, which anybody that knows math, from 23.4 to get to a 90-degree angle, 66.6 degrees. The curvature is even 0.666 feet per mile squared. So those numbers alone are a red flag for anybody listening. It's like, I never noticed that. I knew the 66,600 because we were so happy to make these models and learn about creation from educators. We wanted to get wise. We wanted to come home and bring that information to our parents. And you don't know that the Bible tells you the wisdom of this world is foolishness to our Father. I never really knew what that meant. But then once you start realizing what the wisdom of this world is, we all had it. And we felt so smart. And we were able to get, you can get promoted. You want to get really promoted? Try to fake some evidence and find something for evolution that proves of a missing link of any kind. It can just be a small bone fragment. And you could just make a statue to match some Neanderthal-looking creature. You're going to get famous. You find soft tissue on a dinosaur bone, you're going to get fired. There's those contrasting wisdoms there at work. One's going to get you the world, because that's why it's called the wisdom of this world. It's going to get you worldly things and success. And the other is going to get you persecution. You're going to be looked at as foolish. But he says, if any man among you seemeth to be wise, let him become a fool so that he can be wise, because the wisdom of this world is foolishness. And so that alone there is one of my favorite quotes, because when I started figuring all this stuff out, I'm like, man, I felt so smart, though. When I was teaching my kids with a globe, I thought, I'm showing them the Coriolis effect. I'm doing this. But it says not to make graven images of anything in heaven. That's one of the commandments, not making these graven images of things in heaven. Well, he called the firmament heaven. He put the planets up there. We call them planets. They're not really planets. They're the chiefs of the stars. And when you read like the book of Enoch, it has a prophecy about them. It says they're going to leave their orbital paths and tasks. Everything was prescribed a path at creation that showed us the appointed times and when things were happening. That's how they knew when the Messiah was coming. They've always had people studying the stars. But it says the chiefs of the stars, the ones that we call planets, will leave their orbital paths, and a generation to come, a generation of sinners, will err in their understanding about them and take them to be gods. And every single one of them is named after a god, except for earth. And what was earth? Dry land. God called dry land earth. Not the seas, not the world. There's the world, which is everything, the firmament, the whole world, the waters. But earth is just dry land. And so it's a prophecy that would have helped. If people would have kept that book, they'd have understood it, that was going to come. But that book was hidden for years and years and years. And it says at the very beginning, this book is for a generation to come in the end times. So it's like one of those that when you read it, everything makes sense. Why we've been lied to, who's been lying to us,
And why?
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the most important question to answer is why, and it's that spiritual aspect of it. They are removing the creator. They have their own version of creation, which it's a Big Bang, and that was invented by a Jesuit pope. And again, their oath is evil. If you want to read it, check it out. But that Big Bang, that's the new creator. It was an explosion. It wasn't a creator. It was an explosion. And so they're getting their own version of it. The Father says it's not moving. It's immovable. In the book of Joshua, the sun stood still. The sun was in motion, but it stood still back then. The earth didn't stop spinning. Otherwise, everything would have just went crazy. But the earth was immovable. They're going to put it in motion. It's got a firmament above it. Nope, it's in outer space. It's meaningless. It's just flying. We're on a spaceship right now talking, and we all believed it. And it's crafty. Like, I couldn't imagine trying to teach people that way back when, but it takes educating people. It takes, taking them away from their parents who are teaching them about the Bible, creating a system where we bring people in and we make them wise. We give them the wisdom of this world. So it's quite the system we have in place. And I'm not saying educators are evil. I am one. They're good people, but we just pass on these lies that are repeated over and over and over, millions of years, billions of years. You hear it all the time. Every time we go to a movie, we went to the IMAX in Chattanooga, and we watched two different films. One day we watched one about climbing Mount Everest. All they talked about was giving credit to the gods, the false, their false gods that they worshipped, and they start out the documentary. Billions of years ago, you're seeing what, has left the remnants, like this mountain came up, and they always throw in the billions and millions of years. And then we went back and watched another one about the savannah, the Sahara Savannah, whatever, I'm trying to think which one it was somewhere. And they had, as soon as they start, millions of years ago, you're seeing, the remnants of dinosaurs. And they just kind of like bring up this stuff, and when you're not awake to it, it just seems like, wow, it's pretty cool. They're showing me something, and I'm learning. And these creatures evolved from dinosaurs, and these giant, massive creatures went extinct, and then they somehow evolved after they went extinct into all the stuff we have today. It makes no sense when you really, really break it down, and trying to put that evidence out to people. They just look at you like you're crazy. I try to bring stuff to my department, very sneaky, like, here, look at this. And they're like, nope, next.
We got to teach this.
Yeah, we got to teach something else. We got to teach to the standard. And you can stick to the standard. The standards tell you to look at the evidence. And that's the loophole is we're looking at the evidence. Pull up this fossil here that's a missing link and look at all the ones just like it. And it's like they're clones of each other. Like somebody in the fraud department just started making copies of the same one and to try to make it look like there's a bunch of them. And, the very first missing link to come out onto land, it's the Ostega. They always find a new one. This is their new one. It's this lizard-looking creature. And so they have this new missing link, and they worship these things. Like, these things are a big deal to them. Yeah. And they're like, it came out on land. And my thing is, okay, it got on land. It was the one lone fish that grew legs and walked on land. Who did it mate with?
Yeah.
Who fertilized its eggs?
Yeah, then there'd be two of them, right?
So there has to be another one. Where did the other one come from? So it's like, so two of them came out, a male and a female. One had the ability to fertilize an egg, and they just somehow made it onto land. So like we don't think that deep. We're like, oh, there's the missing link, and then here's a picture of another one that looks similar to it, and another one, and then they turn into wolves. But no, then the wolves turned back into whales. They went back into the water, so now we got whales, and it's just it goes all around. It goes in different paths, and they never put it out linear and let you see the whole picture. They have their own tree of life, and their tree of life isn't the one in the garden that we read about. It's the one that shows an amoeba turning into humans, butterflies, plants, all these different things, all these billions of different things all came from an amoeba, allegedly. So it's very hard to believe. It takes a lot of faith.
And how do you prove either one of them?
Yeah, it's a religion. And I think, in my mind, you go to the one that has the most proof, and we're told that it's the evolution. The creation, that's just nonsense. And it would be if we couldn't destroy the fact, the proofs that we have that the creation story has verifiable, solid scientific evidence. We have proof that the bones that we find are young. We have proof that the Red Sea crossing happened. Like proof, not just artifacts on the bottom. We had those. We had chariot wheels on the bottom of the Red Sea. We had all these cool little artifacts. But the coolest thing that I saw is the shoreline. If you've ever watched the Ten Commandments movie, they had that big pillar of fire that came down. That's mentioned in the Bible. This pillar of fire, I just pictured these flames coming down. But when you go to that shoreline where it's documented to happen, the entire shoreline is melted sand. And it takes about 3,000 degrees or more to melt that sand. And it's evenly melted. You can almost see like footprints. There's stones infused in this melted sand. This is amazing. You don't hear about it. If it was a proof of evolution, it would be in every single textbook. But it's a proof that there was an exodus, like we're having today. You're talking about the exodus, people leaving the cities. It's happening again. We're all being called out of Egypt. This Bible that we read is so true. We're being called out of Egypt again and again. Come out of Babylon, come out of her by people. Babylon and Egypt, those two kingdoms were side by side at their max. And so those customs, you see the same symbols, the same creatures, the same people. Like Nimrod might have many different names in different cultures. Why is that? Well, when the father destroyed that tower, what happened? He sent people all around the world and changed their languages. So you might call him Nimrod. Somebody in China is going to call him something else. So there's see the same type of statues and symbols throughout all these different cultures, pyramids and everything. Why is that? It's because that we were all spread out, and when the Father sent his Son, he said, preach this gospel of the kingdom to the whole world, to the corners of the earth, like out there, And so when he sends his Son, when the Son comes back and returns, everyone's going to see him, right? And I thought, me and my wife, this question we used to ask about 8 years ago is how? How are we going to see him? What if he shows up in Australia?
Right. The land down under.
Yeah, so I was like, technology. We're going to have iPads. We're all there on our phones. Like, that's it. We're just going to be on our phones and we'll see him that way. No, it says every eye will see him. Not an image of him, not a recording of him, not some post-recording, not some live event streamed on YouTube. This is going to be the real deal. Everyone's going to see. So I'm like, that to me, it all starts to make sense when you realize that day 2 of creation was a legit structure being made. He didn't just sit there and let atmosphere be made and let the trees produce oxygen. Then that would have been like another Sabbath. He'd have been resting on that day. No, he was making the most massive structure in existence that I know of now. And so that's why we can't go beyond the 60th South parallel. We're not allowed to travel there. We can go there on like private, tours and guided tours. But if you start you get in a ship, a fishing boat, whatever, and try to go to that where you're not allowed to travel, they meet you with military force. We've got videos of people trying to do this and these giant ships coming out like, turn around, we're going to open fire. Like these people are serious about protecting ice. When has all of our world powers agreed on one thing peacefully? And they've agreed on this for decades, since NASA was formed and Operation Paperclip happened. Have you ever looked into Paperclip?
Very,
Yeah.
very little.
Yeah, it's the one time where, we demonize Nazi Germany and the things that happened, but what do we do with the war criminals, the people that were doing this to the Jews? We promote them. We give them great jobs. Werner von Braun, the founder of NASA, one of the founders, this guy, he was the one that invented one of the bombers, the V-2 bomber. I mean, he was the rocket expert of his time, Werner von Braun. And he was a Nazi scientist who had, the Jewish people working in his factory, the slaves, doing slave labor and stuff. We promoted him, brought him over here. And this guy, before he died, he warned, because he was on his deathbed, he warned about a coming deception. And his warning he had multiple warnings with the deception coming. All of them have came true except for one. And he called it the final card. He said their last card. And it has to do with this extraterrestrial threat, this alien threat. What have we seen in the news lately? They're shooting down UFOs. They're doing all this stuff. And, keep it, don't go to Area 51. And people have no clue that Area 51, what really actually happened there to start off the UFO era, was a demonic ceremony, like they call it like sex magic rituals that they were doing. One of the guys that founded Jet Propulsion Laboratories, Jack Parsons, was a part of that. And so they opened some sort of portal, summoning demons and whatever, and making it to where there was a shift. And you notice technology boomed, and they try to act like, in your mind you go, well, they just stole UFO technology. That's how they made smartphones and did all this. No, this is wisdom of the fallen returning. And so we're seeing all these things. People are having abduction experiences all of a sudden. And the only ones that have ever been stopped, they've actually documented hundreds of them to being stopped, were stopped when people called out to the Father or called out to Jesus. When they called out to the Father and said, hey, stop this, like it stopped instantly. So they're documented to stop these things, but the people that experienced those were plagued for years and years, because it's demonic. And people think, oh, it's aliens, and they get excited and they put it in pop culture, and it becomes the wisdom of this world again. And so I would sound wiser if I said there's aliens coming than if I said the world's not moving.
Yeah.
It's like you sound smart saying one or the other. You're like, oh, I can believe that. There's all these galaxies out there. And so, I mean, it's quite there's just so much that goes into it. It's hard to...
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem.
Wonder why the flat earthers are so demonized, I guess would be the word for it. They're just trying to think like the rest of us, aren't they? Mm-hmm. It's like a mystery, looking into a mystery.
Yeah, it's the same, and you'll see the same imagery anytime you go to YouTube and type in flat Earth. You're not going to see a firmament and all the land and the laser test that we're doing, the proofs that we have, the video footage of the firmament that we have. You're not going to see any of that. You're going to see a bunch of debunk and all the water going off the edge of a flat disc floating in space that none of us believe in. You're going to see those images, and it's powerful in their minds, because the first time I heard that, flat Earth, when somebody was talking about it in a comment of a video, I went, man, this must be some new age stoner movement where people are just so high on drugs that they believe there's just some disc floating in space. But then I had the miracles happen, and I said, after I had the third miracle happen, I said, Father, I said, I know I'm missing something with the truth about creation. I don't know what it is. I said, but I want you to show me the truth about creation. I don't care how crazy it sounds. I want to see the truth, and I want it to bring glory to you. And that was my humble question. I didn't even realize that by saying I don't care how crazy it sounds that he would show me the truth, and I would be like, man, why did I ask? Because you got to be careful what you ask for. He showed me that the truth about creation does sound crazy to everybody, and it's not easy to wake people up. But I've never seen it be dangerous. They act like it's a dangerous thing. I've had people give testimonies about coming off of drugs, picking up Bibles for the first time, learning who the Messiah was, learning who our Father is. Why would he send us his son? What was so bad? What deceptions were going on back then that he had to send us his son in the first place? And so you see a pattern, and it's a sad pattern when you actually go back and look at it through the eyes of this loving Father who made mankind. He made everything so perfect and in harmony. Animals, we could communicate with animals. When the serpent's talking in the garden, Eve didn't freak out. She wasn't like, oh my gosh, there's a talking serpent. She was having a conversation. There was unity, there was harmony, there was life, there was no death. We were eating from the tree of life, and we had one rule, and we broke it. And so from then on, since we chose death is what we chose when we did that, death has been the enemy. It's the last enemy to be defeated. But from then on out, there was all these, things that were happening. Every time the people would mess up, he would send them a deliverer, someone, Moses, Elijah, Elisha, all these people, he was sending them to help straighten them out and get them back on the right path. Those people were getting killed. They were getting, after they died, they'd get ignored, and people would go back to the false teachings. And so finally, he sent us his son, who did everything the right way, the way that he intended us to live, the way he intended us to walk. And when someone did that, it changed everything. When he sent his son. And so it's a huge, the whole truth about creation plays into that gospel of the kingdom message, because that kingdom is going to be coming down from above, that new Jerusalem, and all these things make perfect sense. The sky, the firmament parting like a scroll, all of these things that are going to happen.
Do you think the firmament will open?
Yeah, I think it's going to open, and that's the cool thing about it. It makes sense when you understand it. Stars are going to fall. Like falling stars, they're literally falling out of the firmament. This is like prophetic stuff. And it doesn't say that these distant suns are going to shoot at us. These are stars. There's one sun, there's one moon, and then there's stars, and there's lights in the firmament. So things like comets. When you see a comet, shine a flashlight in the water and see what that looks like, and then compare that, when you're underwater looking at the rays coming through. It's exactly like a comet, a light shining into the waters above, and people looking at stars, a lot of these things. You see water, we've seen lunar waves, all these really cool properties of the firmament. And a lot of it's being ignored. Like scientists in, I think it was Colorado, they were shooting signals up, and they detected a barrier above us. And they said, this seems like a force field, like some sort of science fiction, Star Wars type of barrier. And NASA goes, oh, no, there's a man-made bubble surrounding Earth. We've already detected this thing, because the Van Allen belts have been why we can't go beyond and go to the moon again. We did back in the day. We can't do it now because there's these Van Allen belts, and they're deadly. And so when you ask astronauts about it, they're like, no,
what's a Van Allen belt?
It's a cover story. It's what they say. It's this deadly layer of radiation surrounding the ball of the Earth, and it's like so deadly.
From hairspray?
Yeah, we can't. Yeah, from all the whatever. Yeah, it's from the sun, and it's just like this deadly layer. We cannot go there, and that's why we can't pass through it. And so we haven't sent anybody back to the moon since they discovered this thing. Like it's.
Did they go through it then, or was it not there then?
They went back. Well, there was I think it was Alan Bean. They said, did it have any effect on you? And he said, no. And I don't think we went far enough out to go through it. And they said, well, it's actually like so many thousands, 3,000 miles away. And he goes, oh, well, then we passed right through it. And he's like, his story, he's like, but they hadn't really been discovered yet, so it didn't really affect us, But these things, now that's like a big deal. We can't go through this barrier.
What about Elon Musk? Is he going to go? He's supposed to go to Mars, right?
He was actually in von Braun. I told you about Werner von Braun, the Nazi scientist, wrote a book in the 50s about going and colonizing Mars. The person who's going to be ruling the colony in Mars was given the title Elon. was what he said in his book.
Boy, that's a coincidence.
Yeah, it is a coincidence. It's a bunch of coincidences. Once you start going into this route, it's like, why are there so many coincidences with this narrative? And you try not to sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist when you're talking about this stuff, but there's just so many connections, like the Von Braun connection with Elon. Elon, his picture of him in his profile, he's wearing a Baphomet satanic costume. And people look at him like this hero, and now he's trying to act like he's more right-wing, and now you got all the people on the right-wing side kind of grouping towards him, like Elon's going to save us and give us free speech. And we're looking for a man type of savior. We're looking for some king or ruler, just like they were back before we ever had a king, before the Father's people ever had a king. Samuel warned them because they wanted a man king like all the other nations. And the Father's like, I'm your king, like you don't need another king. But if you want to have another king, here's what's going to happen. You're going to be taxed. They're going to do this. They're going to all these things that are going to happen did happen when they finally got their king. And so their little idol image of person that they could have, it's been bad. All the systems we have now with the taxation and all that stuff, it would have been avoided if we had the perfect system where we're taking care of the poor, where we're growing food to help take care of our neighbors, loving our neighbors. Everybody worked together. They had things in place to where we were all resting at the same time. We were all enjoying this perfect system, and we destroyed that system, and we wanted slavery, essentially, is what we have with the current system, where we're just like debt slaves and loan after loan. Yeah, it's like, and you can't get out of it, and then you die. And then it's like, what was the purpose of my life? I don't want to be someone who goes to work, comes home, goes to work, comes home, all the way until it's over, and I don't do any. There's no change. You're not doing what the beloved Son did, and so it's like you realize you really need to cut ties with so many different things, and your life starts to change, and you start looking different than the rest of the world. Then you get persecuted. When I was a lukewarm Christian, I never got persecuted. And I thought, man, this changed. We're not in biblical times anymore. And then I started getting biblical beliefs and going back and exploring what the Bible said. And I've been persecuted. I had somebody message me a couple months ago and say, or maybe it was about a month ago, and they said they wanted to kill me. They literally, they said, if you teach any more of this stuff on Facebook, because I have a Facebook page too. He said, I'll kill you. And so I was trying to.
Why they want to be mad at you?
And I'm like, how does that make you so angry? Why does that one thing, me saying that the world you're standing on isn't moving, make you want to kill me? Like, that shows me it's spiritual. Like that and the hate that I've received. I've had debunkers come after me, these people that are like paid trolls that I feel like the government's paying these people because they censor us and they promote them, and they don't do science. They'll just look at what we do in an experiment and go, oh, they just had a typo on that number and messed up here. Now I'm just going to do a video and roast them and make fun of them. And it's like they devote their lives to this. I've never seen anyone devote their lives to debunking a certain topic more than I have this.
Do you know of anything else that's more controversial?
Oh, God, it's hard to find because, I always thought, things like 9/11 were really controversial, and it couldn't get worse than that. But
I remember when it was just Bigfoot.
Yeah, that was it.
That was all. Bigfoot or not
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot.
Yeah, Bigfoot.
Then they put them together.
Yeah.
You know, that Bigfoot, there's always a UFO in the background.
Yeah.
But I like conspiracy theorists. I think they're fun to think about.
Yeah.
And, just fun to, like watching a mystery show or something like that. I like that. Think about different stuff.
Yeah, investigating it without bias.
Yeah.
Yeah, just and there's no harm in that. It's when you show up with bias that in my opinion, it kills science. It kills the scientific method when you show up with that bias. When you have a bunch of people like in the 1800s making all these alleged discoveries with fossils, they all were Darwinian evolutionists. They all had an agenda. They were all atheists.
Even though they just found it.
Yeah, and they just happened to find it. You can go out there and dig a rock quarry, you'll never find anything. But these people who are Darwinian, paleontologists, they're going to find it. It's weird to me that they're the only ones finding these things and making money off of finding bones.
I always wondered if God created, they say the Earth's so old, but when he created Adam, he wasn't a baby, he was an adult. So if you was to test Adam that next day, he would have been shown to have been older. So God could have created the Earth with some age. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was my old theory. Before I've really dug into this stuff, it just says that it was without form. It was void. It didn't say there was nothing there, but it talks about him hovering over the waters, and then he made the dry land appear. And so my theory was always that it was here, and there was some chapter before us, where there was a chapter with giant creatures that allegedly, were dinosaurs or whatever, and then it was wiped out. Maybe he set the devil down here, and the devil wiped it out. That was kind of my theory, and that was the asteroid. It wiped all that out, and then he started over fresh, took away the devil's powers, and then we had our chapter. That was my theory before I started finding out that a lot of these things are far younger. The dinosaur bones aren't millions of years old, and provably so, and so that was a theory I had for years. My dad actually brought that theory to my attention. Like, yeah, the world was without form. It was void. It doesn't say that it wasn't here. So it could have been here for millions of years, and that was sort of,
right.
That was sort of how I justified that. And it wasn't until I started the truth about creation investigation with the firmament that I started going, maybe it's really not millions of years. Maybe we are being lied to. But it's hard because people go, oh, sure, like every space agency is going to be in on it, every scientist. And I'm like, no, it's not literally every scientist. It's only the people that have to know. Like, you look at the astronauts that went to the moon, the only ones that have ever gone below a low Earth orbit, they were all a part of the same exact secret society. And that's not a conspiracy. That's just proven, except for one. And that was Neil Armstrong. And Neil Armstrong's dad was in that secret society. So they're all in the same club. And with that secret society making up like 0.00001% of the population or whatever it is, what are the chances that just the 12 that went there are all in the same club? And this is a club that's keeping secrets. That's their specialty. And so it's like, if they're in this Freemasonic club of keeping secrets and they're all going there, and then when they come back, you see their interview, and they're all very kind of like cowered over. They're not like excited, like, hey, man, we just did something that we should have died doing. We left a ball that moved 25 million miles on our way back, and somehow we landed on it. Like, the Earth wasn't stationary when they came back to see it. You remember, it was going.
That's a good point.
It was going 66,600 miles per hour, and they're flying on this little bitty tin can made out of curtain rods and construction paper. They're trying to come back, and how come the Earth didn't move out of the way?
Or smash them.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like they just somehow went in this straight path. No, they would have had to have a combustion speed to keep up with Earth. And they're like, oh, but it's like when you're on a train.
Are you leery that they went to the moon too?
Yeah, they definitely didn't go. And that's the problem is I believed it. I believed it 100%. I watched the Apollo 13 movie. I got emotional. I'm like, he's covering up the Earth with his thumb. That's where I'm at, And you get this like, they get it into your emotions, and then you get passionate about it, and then you're going to hate somebody who goes up against you and says, no, that didn't happen, because you're passionate about it. You're like, we're America. Like, we went to the moon, and you get passionate, you get patriotic about it, and it's like you take credit for it, like a sports team. Like, that's my team, that's my people. We're wise. We're
tribal people.
Yeah. So we feel like this sense of pride, and that's what it is. He rejects the proud. We get pride involved, and that's where we go south. I'm like, and so when you humble yourself, that's when it really changes your life. Is when you start humbling yourself enough to just investigate the claims, and they have good imagery. I mean, the people now, they always allegedly go to the ISS, and they're going around the ball every 90 minutes, and I believed that. I believed it 100%. I love the space. I mean, who doesn't love watching the shuttle launch, just slow motion, the combustion, and think, oh, that's going in space. And you watch them and they just fly straight back down. But you're like, no, they're flying with the curvature. There's no way they're going to some distant point in the ocean or Antarctica. They're going to space, And so you start studying their flight paths, though, and their flight paths are just like a rainbow. I mean, just every time. And the experts, like, they have to escape, to get the escape velocity. They have to fly with the curvature of the Earth. And there's just that, but when you can see it from the side view, it's just this small little arch, almost like the St. Louis Arch. And I'm like, if it looks like that from the side, but the curvature of the Earth is so big we can't see it from 200,000 feet up, how are we seeing it from right here on the ground, just watching a plane within 10 minutes, or a rocket or whatever in 7 minutes? And why don't we have uncut rocket footage? Because that's what, when I'm trying to debunk flat Earth, the very first thing I do is I go, I'm going to send these people some rocket footage, uncut, from launch to all the way around the Earth a couple times, or even just one time. surely they've attached a camera to one of these things and filmed one lap
Sure,
around.
yeah.
3 minutes max. I can't get anything beyond that. I'm like, my goodness. We've got the equipment. We have people sending up balloons and getting 3 hours
Yeah.
worth of footage on a balloon. And this is somebody like me in Georgia with
Yeah.
a balloon and a GoPro going beep, turn it on, record, go. And there it goes. And it falls all the way to the ground and you get the whole mission. We don't have that with this multi-trillion-dollar space agencies all around the world. We don't have that.
What do we care? What do we care if the Earth's round or flat? What does it matter to me tomorrow?
Yeah, that's the big thing. The thing that it matters is it could impact someone's salvation, and you don't even know.
Oh, I see.
You don't even know. It's not that it's a salvation
You're talking
issue.
about the long play.
Yeah, not that it's a salvation issue. Like, I had miracles happen before I believed in the globe, or before I believed in the geocentric model. The Father loved me before I believed in that. When I was a fool, He's loved me, you know? And so knowing that, it may not have affected me. I could still believe in the globe and still be a believer, but there's people out there who are stuck in that atheistic trap of, we don't mean anything. There was this big explosion. That's how we got here. This is a short ride. I'm going to do, YOLO, they say. You only live once, which is not biblical. You want to live twice. You don't want to die the second death, So we want them to live more than just once, not just this short little chapter. It's going to be over soon, like I feel like I was 32 years ago and now I'm turning 40, and it's going to be the same way for 50, 60, 70, done. It's like we're not here very long. It's a very short ride.
About hold our breath that long.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's just like boom, boom. And so I just feel like while we're here in this existence, we need to prove all things and prove that the Creator's words are true and get to know Him because He's the Creator. He's the one we want to spend eternity with. He sent us His Son. And there's going to be a 1,000-year reign coming up. And so you look at the timeline of Earth, where we're at, it's extremely significant. It feels like the end times because we're about to approach that last 1,000-year period. Peter said, don't be ignorant of this one thing, that a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. I never really looked into that. Why is Peter saying, don't be ignorant of this? Well, you look at creation, 6 days of creation, right? The seventh day He rested. Well, if I look at each day as 1,000 years, we're at the end of that 6,000 years. We're approaching the seventh day. And when Jesus was talking about to His disciples, they're like, when's the end going to be? He says, don't let your flight be on in the winter or on the Sabbath day. He didn't say just a random Sabbath day. He said the Sabbath day. What are we approaching? We're approaching the Sabbath day, the 1,000-year period, which I think would be a perfect time for a millennial reign if it models creation, So it's going to be, I feel like everything's just perfectly the way He set it up. It's a perfect system. And if we're looking at time the way we're supposed to, it's going to make perfect sense when we're entering that. And right now we're experiencing persecution, all these tribulations, people like the Euphrates, like prophecy said, is drying up. If we don't know prophecy, we just think the Euphrates drying up is going to be global climate change. And they're going to have these laws, and you're going to see it's going to persecute believers. People that keep Sabbath, no, we're going to have a global Sabbath, but it's not going to be on the Father's Sabbath. It's going to be on another one. We're all going to keep it together, and you got to obey this, And so you go back and look at the original marks of the Father where it says it's going to be like a mark on your forehead. It's always talking about keeping His words. And so I think to be sealed for Him and marked for Him is what's important in this upcoming time period where we're about to see everybody's looking for like a microchip or some like they're going to write 666 on my hand. I believe it's what we do with our heart. The Father protecting us and us being His children is going to keep us from taking the mark of the beast. We're going to be marked for Him. I think that's really big.
On the courthouse square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call.
So your idea is to, through science, help prove the Bible, and hence go against the narrative of evolution.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So this is almost your ministry in a sense.
Yeah, that's a big part of my ministry. It's where I started. It's kind of taking all these different turns, but destroying their false evidence, and it falls apart itself. You really just have to get somebody to investigate it, and that's what I want to do. I want to make curriculum for children that investigates their evidence. But we don't just ignore it and go, "There's no evidence for evolution, move on." I want them to see it. I want them to be able to stand firm and go, "This was a lie. This was proven false. This was a lie. Here's how you can break this down." And look at the motivations behind these people who were perpetuating these lies, like the Piltdown Man, Lucy, the Dino Bird, the moth experiment, all of these things that were proven false. Ernst Haeckel, another Nazi Germany guy who helped create racist ideas but because of his drawings. And this guy had drawings that are from the 1800s that are proven fraudulent of embryos that are still in our textbooks today. My students, when I'm in the classroom this year, 120 years, 130 years later from these things being drawn by a Nazi guy, these things are still in my kids are still seeing those pictures. Not because I'm showing it to them, but because other teachers have them readily available. They're not, and I've told them these are not accurate. Here's the real pictures. Can you show them the real pictures? And I've had even other teachers in my department see that and do the same and try to help me out, but it still gets passed on to these kids, and it's blinding their eyes because it's false evidence. So yeah, I want to dedicate a lot of my time to putting out resources where parents who are homeschooling can say, "Oh, here's a good resource on the evolution evidence or the lack thereof. Here's the evidence for creation and intelligent design. Here's the evidence that the Exodus happened. Here's the evidence that the ark landed over here." You know, all the different evidence we have. It would be good for people to be able to explore it and see it and not just see one side of the equation and just move on to a meaningless life and die, essentially. You know, so that's my goal, is to, you know, literally bring glory back to the Father with the ministry that we have, and just let the evidence speak for itself, and unite believers and unite people, and try to fellowship with people like you who are investigating things. Try to fellowship with other people and not just have our own little group of people that hold hands and, you know, make friends, but be kind about it. Give people an example of how to share the truth and without ridicule, because that's one of the biggest things, is the ridicule aspect. And I see some people, like, imagine you've got all this knowledge with construction and math and all these different things, and people look at you and go, "Well, he's a smart guy." But imagine if all of a sudden you believed in something and the whole world is like, "You're an idiot. You're dumb." Like, you get a chip on your shoulder. Some people do.
It doesn't take long, does it?
Yeah, it takes long before you're like, "No, you're an idiot. You believe in this. You think you're moving on a spinning ball." Like, and people just start getting a chip on their shoulder, and it hinders the movement. So I want people to be like, just take it. Whatever people send at you with hate, send them love back. And the Father showed me that when I was getting attacked early on. He said, "Just send them love, see what happens." So I was like, but I want to say something smart.
Yeah.
I want to say,
Yeah.
you know, something educated.
Yeah.
You know, "Do you know that I have a master's degree? You know, where'd you go to school?" You know, instead of doing something like that, just send them love. And man, it started changing, like boom, boom. Then it's like, I was like, I never would have thought to do that. I would have thought to have been a smart aleck.
Yeah.
But that makes people angry. It gets you caught up in that attack mode, and you're returning love for hate. And it's like, that's biblical, and it changes lives. And I had to have people come back and say, "Man, I'm sorry. I was coming after you, and the Holy Spirit dealt with me, or, you know, I've had a change, and so sorry." And I'm like, man, this is awesome. Like, if we can just humble ourselves, like Jesus said, those are the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. When they asked him, they were like, "Who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" Like, we want to be the greatest, you know, like, what do I need to do? He didn't say, "Those of you who know every word in this book the most," or "Those of you who have the most wealth," or "take care," you know, like, he said, he grabbed a small child and said, "If you can humble yourself like this small child, those are the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." People that are humble. And I'm like, we underestimate the ability of just humbling ourselves. You know, we look down at people. We go to a restaurant, we look down at the servers. We have custodians cleaning up our place. We look down at them like, that's not my job. They're you know, like, we just look, we get prideful. And the way the Father works, it's like he rejects the proud, and we have an entire month called Pride Month. You know what I mean? So it's like the opposite of what we're supposed to be, and we don't realize it. And I'm not bashing people who are gay or homosexual, but no matter what your struggle is spiritually, be humble. You know, if that's your weakness, if your weakness is homosexuality, if your weakness is things on the internet, whatever it is, humble yourself. Ask to be set free. When it talks about being set free, I didn't even know what that really meant. I thought being righteous was me doing it on my own. And I tried and tried and failed and tried and failed. And you get caught up in this condemnation cycle where you really can't get close to the Father because you keep going, well, I get closer to you when I do better, when I'm walking better, when I'm going to church all the time, when I'm doing this. And you keep getting knocked down with that, with messing up with your flesh. And he sent us his son to give us not just an example, but then there was Pentecost, the Holy Spirit walking in the Spirit, asking to be set free. And when you say, I'm ready to be set free, he's going to drop the slavery of your flesh away from you. You don't even have to be a slave to it. You think you do because you're programmed. They're like, oh, you're just being a guy. You know, you're just doing what's natural. And reality, you were a slave to your flesh and you don't realize it until you get set free. And then you're like, man, it was like there was a literal ball and chain keeping me in the world, you know, like one hand in the world, one hand over here in the Bible and trying to kind of go back and forth. It's like, you can't do that. You just really have to say, Father, set me free. I'm ready. And that's why it says it's not my righteousness. It's not because I was able to overcome. It's because he's able to overcome, and he sent his son who also was able to overcome. And it's been a powerful change in my life, and it's led me all over the place. I mean, crazy. I've been around the world meeting people. I've been, golly, so many gatherings. And I mean, it's like people are just kind of drawing together coming out of Egypt all at the same time. So it's been a fun experience the past 6 or 7 years.
Why doesn't the Bible tell us where God came from?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just like that.
I mean, it says he's from Mount Teman. You know, that verse says he's from Mount Teman. And I don't really know what that means, but I'm sure it's not literally Mount Teman. But I often wonder why he just didn't say how he began.
Yeah.
Have you ever read The 12th Planet by Zachary Sitchin?
No, I haven't.
Well, you ought to read that. That is wild, wild, wild. But he tries to explain where God comes from.
Yeah. That's the things that leave you up at night laying there thinking for hours. My dad used to get us to he'd go, let's just think about eternity. Ready? You know, like we'd lay down at night and he'd go, think about it. And we were like 10, 11 years old going, I can't. Like, I can't imagine eternity. Like, it's such a long time. And he's like, yeah, it'll break your mind trying to think about some of these things.
Yeah, you know, it's almost like ignorance is bliss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, maybe the Earth's flat and it's not round, and it's not a big conspiracy theorist. Maybe it's just everybody's theory, and there's no hidden agenda. Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's...
I mean, you know, if you look for a hammer, everything. If your hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just. I mean, we even go back, you know, 50 years ago or 60. Everybody thought one thing. Now they think another. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Well, I mean, they're always saying coffee's good for you, coffee's bad for you, and sugar's bad for you, and sugar's good for you.
Yeah.
Now they're saying salt's good for you, and they were saying salt's bad. So maybe we're all the time changing our mind. Back in Aristotle Socrates thought the world was flat, and Aristotle thought it was round, right? So they just keep changing. Maybe what are some other things that used to be thought one way, but now it's another, besides coffee?
Yeah, there's so many things. Like,
I mean, I remember back in wasn't it the 50s, they told you not to overdo your heart and don't overdo exercise. It'll cause you to have a heart attack. And now they're saying you need to exercise to keep from having a heart attack.
Yeah.
So things change.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you think's beyond the firmament?
That's where there's waters, there's the kingdom. Like he's the highest. When they say the most high, there's levels to the firmament. And so he's the most high. He's above all things, above the highest of the highest firmament. And so so there's his kingdom up there, and you hear when it gives descriptions in the Bible, there's waters up there. And so it's a lot like here. And when they built the temple in Moses' time, it was built on the pattern seen in heaven. You know, the patterns that were revealed to him in heaven. And so it's probably very
the patterns that were revealed to Moses.
Yeah. So like there's an Ark of the Testament. It calls, I think in Revelation it says that he saw the heavens open and he saw the Ark of the Testament. And down here we had the Ark of the Covenant, which I just find the Ark connections fascinating. You know, there was Noah's Ark that saved them with the waters when the flood came. And then there was Moses when he was leading them out of Egypt. They made the Ark of the Covenant. And so you have that. And then when the
Archangel.
yeah, then there was the archangel. That's you got ahead of me right there.
Yeah.
The archangel. When he comes, that's when he's coming. There's the voice of an archangel. You know, like there's this arc. I feel like there's this arc connection that we overlook.
So Moses said he saw the Ark of the Testament.
I think it was. This is in Revelation. I'm sure Moses saw it because a lot of these things were shown to him so that he could know how to make the temple that he was making and the Ark of the Covenant and all of that. But in Revelation, I'm trying to remember which verse it is. It says the Ark of the Testament was seen by either John. I don't know if it was
Might have been John.
Might have been John, I think, in Revelation.
Because John was the one that was on the island, wasn't he? Or,
He was having the revelation. So
yeah, he was right. Yeah, the dreams are.
Yeah, so I think that was a John thing where he saw the Ark of the Testament.
You know, going back to Moses, you ever thought about how odd that was? He had led them out of Egypt. And then he says, wait here for a minute. And he goes up on the mountain. And while he's gone, they melt all their gold down and create a god to worship. You'd think they'd have thought, well, let's stick with this guy. He seems to be doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I know. It bothered me because I'm like, they literally walked through the Red Sea, you know, like.
Escaping slavery.
Mm-hmm. But
they were killing their kids.
Yeah.
He saves them. Says, I'm going to go over here for a little while. He comes back, and they melt all their gold down, and they're worshiping a calf or something made out of gold.
Yeah.
You can't... I believe I'd have said, let's give him a few more minutes.
Yeah. Let's wait about a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give him a little more time.
It always blew my mind.
He'll be back.
Yeah. I was reading that the other day, and it cracked me up because I'm reading, and Moses and him are talking, and then, of course, the father knows that what has happened has happened. And he starts saying, like, you know, basically he could take them out, and then Moses would be the one who carries on the promise. You know, his seed now becomes like, instead of like the seed of Jacob, it's through Moses that all these nations are blessed. And Moses is like, you need to repent of this. You know, like he tells God to repent. Like, you need to repent of this. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. He's telling, you know, the Most High to repent of this thought. You know, like, he's like, what are people going to think that you brought these people out, you parted the waters, and then you just slaughtered them? Like, they're not going to respect you after that. You know, like, they're not going to look at you for your mercy and that you have. And the way that I know you, I'm sure he knew him totally different than the people. And so the father's like, all right, you know, bring them the tablets. Let's see what happens. And so when he goes and brings them the tablets, and he sees what they're doing, he's so angry. He's thinking, man,
he breaks them.
He can now see. Now he realizes, oh, this is what's going on. You know, like maybe we should just wipe them out. But we all have done that. We've all, like me, I had my miracles happened. And then I would turn back to the world and distractions or whatever it is.
In just a few minutes.
Yeah, within it's like, you just think the Most High just literally healed my broken heart in the blink of an eye, that I would follow him forever devoutly. No, here I go going, I got to get my degree, my master's, I got to get, I got to do this, I got to do that. And we just get caught up in this rat race, and I feel like that's how it is. There's so many distractions. You're surrounded by, there were hundreds of thousands of people who got out of Egypt, like these people are there, there's all these distractions, there's mumbling, there's grumbling. They're waiting on Moses, like
they're mad at him.
Yeah, and they're remembering Egypt and like, oh well, all these other people had it so good. Pharaoh had a palace and he worshipped this god. No, why don't we have a god now?
Right.
Like, they just kind of go back to old ways. And so I think we got to always remember.
And probably some of them had been influenced by Egyptian culture.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. And so I think that's why you see it in Rome. Like I went to the Vatican once for my wife and I, before she woke up and I woke up to a lot of this stuff. She wanted to go to Rome, and we traveled the world. We've been to Australia, Rome, and Italy, and not Italy is Rome, Ireland, and all these different places. But Rome, the creepiest vibes I've ever received is going to the Vatican. And I went in there, and you see Egyptian artifacts and hieroglyphs, and I'm thinking, why? Why would they? Why did they bring a giant obelisk? They brought a giant obelisk in here, and the Bible talks about the obelisks of Heliopolis and things, and all of their bad things. They have these graven images, and I'm in a graven image sanctuary. There's statues of all these people
like
everywhere.
Like a museum or some sort.
And I'm like, what? And then I go to the Sistine Chapel, and I'm excited. I learned about this thing in 6th grade, and I've wanted to go there since, and thinking about, the paintings and how they were done. Yeah. And I try to take pictures of them, and a guy comes out and is like, put the camera away. This is the holiest room on earth. I'm like, really? You think we're in the holiest place? So it's just so intertwined in our culture and the Egyptian stuff now. The song came out, "Walk Like an Egyptian." Like that's how they want us to walk. You know, like that's sort of the way where they want us to be led, and we really got to come out of Egypt.
You think the more we think and the more we try to reason, the more confused we get? Or do you think, I mean, it doesn't seem, all this education seems to be confusing too. I mean, when I was 6, I just wanted to watch Captain Kangaroo.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
now I'm trying to figure out if the Earth's flat or round or square. Now, there's some square people. Don't
Yeah.
some people think it's square?
Yeah, there's all sorts of different views on it. Like when I was first looking into it, people were thinking they were saying, no, it's not just flat, it's concave. And I'm like, oh my goodness, why are they doing this? It's almost like they're trying to muddy the
Yeah.
waters.
You
But-
think they're as crazy as
Yeah.
the spherical think you're crazy, right?
Yeah, and there's the hollow Earth where like it's hollow. You know,
Oh, yeah.
Admiral Byrd went over there and they saw this giant hole and they're going in and out of the Earth. And but I think the interesting thing about it is when you look at the Messiah again, going back to him and understanding things like Jonah, the story of Jonah. We look at that and I think he was inside of a fish. And that was it. He was
whale.
like in the cartoons. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's inside this well. He's building a little fire like they did in the
Yeah.
cartoons. He's
Yeah.
surviving.
Yeah.
But when he talks about his experience, he says, "I cried out from the belly of Sheol," and that word Sheol is almost always translated as hell. And so we picture hell being, we grew up with this image of like you either go down or you go up. That's it. You either die, or you go one of the two places. And that's how I was. I mean, I was terrified of that thought of what if I die and I go down there? I
Yeah.
want to go up there.
Yeah.
But it's totally different. Like when you look at it biblically from the true creation account of what's below, Sheol was just the grave. It's the holding place. It's like an area underground. And their Hebrew model of cosmology, the old ancient Hebrew cosmology model, Sheol was beneath. And there's a holding cells for the righteous, the unrighteous. And seems to be like in some books, there's like torment for those who were in Sheol in certain parts, and there's more of like a righteous place. So when people have these near-death experiences, and some of them are pleasant, and they're like, it was very pleasant, and some are like, there was torment, There's that different aspect, but hell is not a place of eternal punishing. They say there's the second death. You hear about the second death, right? Hell, it says, will be cast into the lake of fire. And that's the second death. And so people think that the Father's will is you're either a believer or you're going to be somebody who dies and you're punished forever and ever and ever in eternity. So your grandmother, who was a non-believer, I'm just not your actual grandmother, who was a non-believer but was a decent person, she's going to burn forever in a lake of fire for all eternity while you're up in heaven forever. And that's kind of the way people see God, and they don't want a relationship with him because they're like, that's evil. I don't want that, like that's not justice. She was only alive for 70 years and now she's going to be punished for an eternity,
And she couldn't read.
Yeah,
Or something.
yeah, she couldn't read. She never saw the proofs that we have now of creation. And so the way the Father works is totally different. The whole concept of all of that, going back to Jonah, he said he was in the belly of Sheol, or the heart of the earth. When Yeshua, he said, just like Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the well, he's going to be in the belly of, or the heart of the earth. And you look at, the earth with the Hebrew cosmology going down there to where, there's fallen angels bound down there, and it talks about him ministering to these spirits in I think it's 1 Peter. I'd have to look up the verse. To these angels in the earth. Like, it's crazy. The power struggle, the things that happen after he was on the cross, he didn't just rest and be a dead body. There was actually something that happened, and so it has to do with that creation model going down to Sheol. So the gates of Sheol or the gates of hell won't prevail against his church. Like there's actually is a Sheol or a hell, but the way we look at it is totally false. It's going to be cast into the lake of fire. So it's not like this eternal place that's already there. It's actually a temporary place. It's going to be cast into the lake of fire. There's soon going to be, after the 1,000-year reign, the firmament, the earth, everything's going to be scratched. We're going to have a new heaven and earth.
We're going to be out of it.
Yeah, it's a new heaven and earth. And so we look forward to that new heaven and that new earth. And everything is going to be renewed. And I think it's the book of Isaiah. It says we're not even going to remember the former. Like what we're doing now, all this is going to be, it's such a small chapter in our existence that we're not even going to remember it. Like that's crazy to me to think we're not going to remember this stuff.
Because then one spot it says you'll know as you have known. That always confused me because if you will know as you've known, then I guess we'll remember, but maybe it won't be significant.
Yeah, I think it'll be like one of those, like we're not going to be looking back to it like, Like the people in Egypt, like,
Yeah.
I wish we had the old 9-to-5 job
Yeah, it
again.
won't be like that.
You know, like, I feel
Yeah.
like we're not going to really be thinking, all these matters and things we're not going to be concerned about. It's just going to be such a blessing. Like when I had my broken heart and the Father healed me, all these concerns that I had about everything went away in an instant. Like I wasn't looking back to it like, oh, I wish I had that relationship that I was just so bummed out about. You know, like I was a month away from getting married. We already had the wedding shower. We had all these things going on. I had my heartbreak, you know. And so it was like when I had all that and I was thinking it was just the world and everything was over, my world is ending, I don't want to live if I can't have this person, you know, those negative thoughts, the Father healed me and it was like, there's something better for you, you know.
How
like,
old were you then?
I was 25, barely, just turned 25.
Boy, that's such a
No.
tragic thing to have happen. Isn't it?
Yeah, at
I
that
mean,
point in my life, that was the hardest heartbreak I ever had. And I thought, it can't get worse than this. There's no way there's anything in
It
life.
had-
You know?
I guess we've all had that.
Yeah.
I really haven't had that though.
Yeah.
But you know, but boy, that could change your whole trajectory of your life, couldn't it?
Yeah, it did, and massively. And I mean, because we're raised to be romantics. We're raised to be in this world where it's like, you just got to find your soulmate. You just got to find the right person. And we put them first without realizing that we need to keep the Father first. You know, I didn't realize I put him on a back burner. I didn't realize that my ex-fiance, my job and career and all that was first and that he was going to fall in place later on. I had that made up in my mind, like, oh, someday in the future I'll get close to you. You know, you've helped me get through college. You've helped me do all these things. You've given me all these abilities. I'll get back with you. Just let me get this stuff taken care of first. And that's just not the way it needs to work. You know, it's that loving father relationship. And I know any father out there who's had their son go off into the world, you want to hear from them just for them to tell you, hey, Dad, I miss you. I love you. Not, hey, I need you. Can I borrow your truck? And that, you know, can you bail me out? I'm in jail. Like they want to know that you're okay, that you're following the guidelines you've given them. You know, like you give them those guidelines. Like you tell your kids, hey, when you're crossing that road, look both ways. You don't tell them that so that you can punish them when they mess up. You tell them that so that they don't die. And when he was healing me, he was showing me that, like, I wanted you to keep me first so that you don't die. And right now, what did I want to do? I wanted to kill myself. I wanted to end my life because of the pain, because I didn't put him first. That separation it had caused was because I just didn't follow simple rules. I didn't follow simple guidelines. I put the world first. And whatever you lean on can fall away if it's not him. Anything you lean on in this world, temporary. It doesn't matter how big the structure is. It doesn't matter how nice the person is. They can fall away from you. So like, don't put your trust in mankind. And I try to tell people that all the time. If they're watching me or listening to me, like, don't trust me. Don't put your trust in me and follow me. But, you know, trust the Father and follow him. If I could accidentally mislead you and not know it. I've accidentally misled people plenty of times. And so I always tell people, just prove all things. You know, you don't have to believe me because I have any type of advanced degree or anything. You know, anybody can get an advanced degree.
You're just out here living like the rest of us, trying to figure it all out, right?
Yeah, just investigating, trying.
Do you think that that guy on TV, I don't know who, I can't think of his name, but he does that Ancient Aliens. What's the name of that? Ancient Aliens. I guess that's the name of it, right?
Yeah, Ancient Aliens. They're
got the crazy hair.
Yeah.
What's his
Aliens.
name?
I can't remember his name, but they play into a huge part of the upcoming deception. The one I was talking about a little bit with Von Braun, warning about the final card.
Well, he's entertaining, isn't he?
Yeah, it's very entertaining. And
is there any truth to his?
Oh, it's a twist of the truth. It's a twist. When they say ancient aliens, you can just replace that word aliens with demons or unclean spirits, the fallen, the Nephilim.
He talks about the Nephilim.
Okay, yeah. So they know when the Nephilim died, it says their spirits, since they were part angel, and they came from angel and people, their spirits, their bodies were mortal and could die, but their spirits live on as unclean spirits. And so when Yeshua or Jesus was talking to these demons, you remember he had encounters with demons. He was casting out demons all the time. Mm-hmm. He said, "What is your name?" He knew they had a name. Mm-hmm. They knew who he was. They knew their time was coming. They knew they had a judgment coming. You know, they're like, "Are you here to torment us before our time? Like, we know our time's running out." And so they had a name. He knew they had a name because he knew where they came from. And so they had a name. There was many of them. They said, "We are legion. We are many." There's many of us. And so these things have been around, and that those unclean spirits, like it mentions in Revelation, unclean spirits like frogs deceiving the kings of the earth. right now, all the leaders of the earth could be deceived. They're not in on some lie. They're all deceived. They all believe, if there's some fake alien invasion like we've been warning people about, the kings of the earth might believe it. The people on the news are probably going to believe it. And if you get them to believe it, then we're going to believe it because they're sincere. They're like, oh my goodness, guys, this just happened. There's this giant craft over New York City and prayers for everyone. Maybe they come in peace, and then you have the Pope saying he's going to baptize them if he had to. You have all these weird things going on with these ancient aliens. But if you know who the creator is, what we live on, we know those aliens are demons. They're demonic. They're imagery seen throughout all these ancient cultures because they come from the exact same source. And so it's going to be a big deception coming up. It's going to be worse than anything we've seen, and people aren't going to listen to us. When it happens, it's going to be so real, and it's going to be so. I think it's going to be one of those things that causes people to lose their religion. Essentially, they're going to say, "Oh, these are the ones that put us here." Oh, these are the ones that I feel like it could be that strong of a delusion. And so I feel like all the lies they've had building up now have been preparing for what's to come. And it hinges on everybody believing on their model of creation and believing millions and billions of years. Like all the things that they've worked so hard to create, they wouldn't just scrap it and go, crap, they're onto us. They found evidence that the water doesn't curve. They found evidence that all the stuff that we find that's damaging and should end the globe earth movement, it doesn't, and it's because they need it. They have to have it. They're still going to carry it on, and that's why we've seen such an uptick in the government and the Pentagon, saying, "Oh, we're going to start releasing information." We have released information. There has been sightings. They shot down 4 UFOs in like a week, and then it just stops. It's like first it was the spy balloon.
Did they say what? I thought that's. Did they say that all of them were balloons or weather balloons?
Yeah, they're kind of like, well, we don't know what they were. They would know. These multi-million-dollar planes and pilots would have known that's a balloon. Like your average guy would have known, okay, this is a balloon. But no, we shot something down. We don't know what it is. We're going to investigate. It landed on the ice, but no, we can't find it. We don't know what it was. And then it's like, oh, maybe it was balloons. So it's like they kind of like make it mysterious so that you get drawn into it. So that you're like, oh, I know what they're hiding. They're hiding aliens. We need to storm Area 51. Like, this is exciting. Like, and it gets you going because I remember being a kid watching Unsolved Mysteries. We loved aliens.
Yeah.
We loved aliens and we loved ghosts.
Yeah.
Then I found out there's no such thing as ghosts. There's demons. And there's no such thing as aliens. They're also demons. So it's like the whole demon realm. They get you to believe these lies, to get you to try to communicate with the dead, to get you to try to communicate with an alien. All these things
like
are
a
sinister.
Ouija board.
Yeah, like a Ouija board. Yeah, they're all these things. Just talk to your dead relative. Now they got the seatbelt psychic guy going around misleading pastors. I watched him mislead a preacher who was like, "No, I wouldn't seek that out." And then they start doing their familiar spirit stuff that they did. We were warned about in the Bible, where they talk to familiar spirits or demons who are familiar with someone you had that died. They can give you information. They can give that guy information. Your dead relative isn't going around looking for some fat Uber driver going, "Oh, there's that Uber driver. I want to tell him, to
he's
tell
not
this
trying to scare you anyway.
Yeah, like all these ghosts are just flocking to this one dude who's driving a taxi around. Like it's so unrealistic. But people, we're longing for something else. If we're not reaching out to the Father, we're longing for this worldly wisdom, something to give us a little high, a short temporary high or whatever it is. And that's how people are just getting led astray. And I feel like we're rapidly approaching ultimate deceptions coming up right now. Like it's going to be soon.
Well, you're really familiar with the Bible. Do you study it a lot, or do you read commentaries, or how do you?
I've had to study it now because I want to know, now that I see it as a science book and a history book, as well as a roadmap to where we're going, I want to find out what happens next. Like, where are we going? Like, if the stars start falling out of the sky, am I going to know what happens next? Because I've had that dream where it's like stars were falling, and I remember going, what happens next? And in my dream, I'm panicked. I'm like, stars are literally, boom, falling through the clouds, and I'm like, where do we go next? What do I do? And I can just hear my wife, her voice going, you should read the Bible more. You need to know. Yeah. So I wake up and I'm like, stars falling. What happens next? And it's like, it's too late. It's already at the end. You're already at the very end. Once these things start happening, it's almost too late. You're not going to have a chance to run back in and grab your Bible and turn real quick. Like, it's about to get real. And I feel like people need to really start reading it, really start looking at it with new eyes. No religious bias, don't let man interpret it to you. It says the Holy Spirit's our teacher. It's here to guide us and to show us the truth about the Word and about the Father. And so when
How do you think the Holy Spirit fits into everything?
it gets rid of any confusion you have. And like for me, I would have never looked into the earth being
So
not a
is the
globe.
Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, is that one?
A
or
lot of
three?
people, that's actually, again, coming out of Egypt, and it's a controversial subject. When I talk about this, I get so much hate. The ancient Egyptians, they always had their gods in threes. They always had their unholy trinities that we call them now. And so after Yeshua left, he was going to be with the Father, okay? And the Holy Spirit was never looked at as another body or anything. It was just something you could be filled with. You could be filled with his Holy Spirit. And so there was really just two, the Father and the Son, but it was the Father's Holy Spirit. He's a spirit. You must worship him in spirit. And so after he left, he went to be with the Father. And eventually it tells us Jesus is going to write on us his new name. And it says he's going to write on us the name. He says, I'm going to write on you the name of my God. And so he has a God. It's his Father, and he's going to write on us New Jerusalem. And so once that happens, we're going to have his name, his new name. Not so like now there's a big name debate. Is it Jesus, Yeshua, Yahusha? Like everybody gets into the debate. Someday it's going to go away. He's going to write his new name on us. He's going to write the name of his Father on us and New Jerusalem. So we're going to be marked for him. And that'll get rid of all the confusion. But essentially, Jesus is the Son of the Most High, just like he was when he was here. You only heard God speak twice when he was here. And what did he say both times? He said, this is my beloved Son. And then that was in the water at the baptism. Then you have, again, at the transfiguration, you have him say, this is my beloved Son. Hear what he has to say, hear ye him. And so you have him both times saying that two witnesses, it's the same witness, but it's the Father speaking twice. And so to say that is controversial because a lot of people are like, if you deny that he's God, you don't have salvation. But he is the Son of the Most High. And when everything is over, when all enemies have been put under his feet, because Jesus he's been given the title King of Kings. There's nothing under the firmament that's above him. He's above everything on this earth. His kingdom, just like prophecy says, is an eternal rulership that won't pass away. He was prophesied about to have that kingdom. And so we're going to be joint heirs with him in this millennial reign. We're going to be like joint heirs with the Messiah. But when it's all over, he's going to hand everything back to his Father. I think it's 1 Corinthians that talks about that, giving everything back to him so that he'll be everything. And so he is King of Kings. I mean, he's above the angels. He's above all of us. And so his role and his example to live by, he told us how to pray. Pray to the Father, and say, thy will be done. What did he say when he was in the garden? He didn't want to go and take those steps that led to this brutal sacrifice. He didn't want to do that, but he said, thy will be done. And so we're at this situation in our lives where we have things we don't want to do. Are we going to say that? Or is it, what am I going to do to kind of just make it through this world and be successful and not really have any drama? Because that other path of thy will be done sometimes doesn't look like what we want it to. He's going to take care of us and get us through, but it's going to be a road that is different than what the world wants, the stuff the world wants to give you, because you can have the world, you really can, and it comes at a price, but you can have everything else, being set free, the miracles, the love, and all of that, eternal life. And the price for that's already been paid. You just have to look at that example and start over, basically start over fresh and keep God first with all, and seek after him wholeheartedly. And he sees your heart. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to mess up. But it's his love and compassion is really what brought me to him. And so I want people to see that. I'm not just like, I'm going to be nice to this wrathful being so he doesn't kill me. No. This is a loving Father who set me free time and time again, who throughout the Bible has set people free time and time again. They were always turning to false gods. He could have just wiped them out with another flood if he hadn't made his covenant. But he kept his word. He didn't flood the earth again. He didn't do any of that. He waited, and there was prophecies about the grace to come to this generation of people who have not, and I think it's the second book of Ezra, again, fourth book of Ezra, whatever you want to call it, that was removed from the King James in the 1600s, that said there's a people that have not seen the works of his hands or his prophets. They're going to seek him out. They're going to start seeking him out and seeking his ways out, and they haven't seen all that stuff. If the people that have seen it turned away from him, it's cool to think that we're people that haven't seen all that. And here we are, seeking it out, looking.
Why'd they take some of the books out?
No.
You ever wonder that?
Yeah, I did.
I mean, like the book of Enoch.
Yeah, I was really big on It's not in the canon. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not even going to, it's not in the canon. It's
Yeah.
that. And I said that word. I didn't even know what that word canon even meant.
Yeah, it was.
I just heard somebody else say it.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And
What was the Council of Nicene or
Yeah,
something?
there's the Council of Nicaea. That's where the
Yeah.
Trinity doctrine started, about making that, where they merged and made it to where now we have
They
the
said
triune God.
They said these
Yeah.
are the real books.
Yeah, and you have to confess this. And then there was persecution if you didn't confess it.
Confess what?
That essentially that God is three, but Jesus said God is one. He said the greatest of all commandments is, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." Well, the Pope Francis, the new Jesuit Pope, he says God is three. And so I see two different, and I'm like, who do I look to? Who do I look to? Always look at the beloved Son. What does he say? Why does it not add up to what the Pope is saying? What's the difference? And investigate it. And then, you look at your Bible, there's translation issues, and people
Boy,
think,
there's a lot of translations.
And
now.
so it scares people away. They're like, well, you're just telling me don't trust the Bible.
I'm just too confused.
Yeah, so they'll get confused, but I'm like, no, just use your research skills. Look at to the original translations. Find out, which Bible translations use the manuscript from the Vatican versus the ones that were earlier, and just cross-compare things until you get a better idea. But the main thing is, when you're dealing with that confusion, pray about it. Be, seeking the Father and the Spirit to show you what the truth is. Because there's things that I've prayed about for years, like, why does this not make sense right here? And it might be 10 years later, he's like, here you go, here's your answer, and I'm like, oh man, I'm glad I kept seeking to find that answer. And so...
maybe sometimes God figures we can't handle it right now.
Yeah. And
You ever think that? Say, why can't I figure that? Well, you can't handle it right now. It's over your head.
Oh yeah, and that's how it is a lot of times with the shape of the earth. Some people, like, it would just destroy their brain. Like, mine almost fell apart when I found out. Like, I remember sitting on the couch, I couldn't even stand up. I was like, the room is like moving. Now that I believe that it's not, I feel like it is. Like it felt weird. I was like, I just wanted to do a standing ovation to the deceivers. Like, you guys did a good job. Just stand up and start clapping. Like, you had me fully convinced in all of this. Like, it's amazing. We underestimate how crafty the evil ones are. But this whole entire world's only ruled over about like 8,000 people up top. It's not a whole lot of people that really pull all the strings.
There's what, 8 billion or something?
Yeah, so it's not a lot. And there's not a lot of people that are in on the lies, but they've got what they all agree on. And you'll see this theme. And prior to a few years ago, it was just two things. Space travel, all the world powers were just so holding hands. Yeah. Smiling, happy people holding hands is literally what they were. We've been up here in this tin can for 3 months and we're just happy. Yeah. I love the Russians, the
space
Chinese.
Station.
The international. And so they're so happy. It is the same people that are guarding Antarctica that are doing this, and they're sending their own kind up, like they sent a bunch of the Apollo missions, and they named that mission itself after a sun god, Apollo, And now they have Artemis, which is another, one of the offspring of Zeus or Apollo. I can't remember how the whole deity thing works together. But they're all paying tribute to these false gods. And so they're agreeing on these two things, space travel and guarding Antarctica. And they've agreed on it throughout all these wars. And the only other thing they've ever agreed on was with the pandemic stuff. Those are three things that all world powers have agreed on throughout my life and before me. So I'm like, there's something to it. When you see all world powers agreeing on something, look out. There's a reason they're all agreeing on it and just going like, yeah, we need to, unite and not be divided. And it's not because they care about us. They don't have secret societies because they're planning a surprise party. They're doing evil stuff usually. There's two reasons to keep secrets. One, you're planning something like the surprise and you want to reward people, but they've been going on for decades. What are they making for us? Is it a big birthday cake? Like, why do they have Jesuit oaths and all these different oaths of secrecy if they're not doing something sinister? So always,
it's wild, isn't it?
It's just too much. It's too much to really
it's too much
to understand how evil it is. It's like, God, there's just
makes you just want to go home and order a pizza.
To go back to sleep. Like like to watch a movie and not see the hidden messages. And see all that stuff. Like,
what else do you do as a hobby? You do anything as hobbies?
Outside of teaching and making videos right now, I'm trying to think. Not a whole lot. It's like I have 5 kids too, so it's
golly, 5?
Yeah, 4 in the house. One's already moved out, so we've had.
How old is he?
My oldest is 24, and my youngest is 10 months.
Golly.
10 months,
How do you
spaced-
afford that?
They're spaced out. I can't. That's the problem. Yeah. So we've been blessed though. We have a nice house. I mean, if you saw my house, you would think I was wealthy, but we got it right before the economy tanked. You know, we got it just in
06
time.
or something, 07?
Yeah. Well, we got one back then when it was about to, right before it tanked, and we sold it, remodeled my wife's old house, sold that, and it just worked really hard and diligently. She's a math genius, and so she figures out how we can live. And we don't live like rich people. We don't have cable TV. We don't have all those
Well, you got
things.
Roku?
Yeah, we got the Roku, and we have, that's it. We don't have any type of entertainment that we pay money for. We don't go out to eat. You know, like we save money everywhere we can, and we're able to have a good house.
You
and
do
good
the
land.
Dave Ramsey theory, or the, you know, that guy that says no debt?
Yeah. I've never looked into that stuff. Like, this is just her doing, like, all
Oh.
her financial guru stuff.
Yeah.
And miraculously, this year, I was forgiven of student loans, $130,000 debt wiped clean for 10 years of service as an educator after I
that
got my
right?
degree. Yeah. So that's a big blessing. Now I feel
Yeah.
more, I feel the weight lifted. I feel more free.
Did you have a lot of debt from school?
Yeah, because it was, I went to Chattanooga, UTC, for 5 years, graduated, got my master's at Liberty for 2.5 years or so. And so that cost a lot of extra money. And so it was like all that combined with the interest, it got up to about a mortgage payment. You know, it was
Golly.
massive. And that was at an age when you take all these loans out that they wouldn't let you buy a house. They wouldn't let you get a mortgage, but they'll let you take all that out and be living under that.
And you can't bankrupt on the student loans,
Yeah.
can you?
I don't
I
think
can't.
so.
I think there's some rule about that. That's criminal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird to do it to little kids. I was
I know
a
it.
19-year-old kid. I had no clue.
You had no clue.
Like, I could pay that off in a few years when I get a job.
I'm going to be a teacher.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a teacher, and then
But 5 kids.
yeah, it's been crazy. We have 4 at the house, an 18-year-old about to be 19 in June, 13-year-old, and my daughter just turned 6, and then my son, youngest son, 10 months old, and so the 24-year-old's already married. I have grandkids and everything. It's kind
Is
of
that right?
Yeah.
I don't even have grandkids.
Yeah. So it's been interesting. I'm becoming a grandpa in my 30s.
How do you keep your sanity?
It's just unique. It's like my 2 sons that live there. They're very calm. They're nice, good kids. My daughter's she's a handful. She's the hardest one of all of them. And
That's
so,
something.
but she's a blessing. She keeps me
She was
on my
more
toes.
like her mother or her daddy.
She's a unique creation. I don't know. She's like energy mixed with, like she's smart. She can read. She has all these things. She's just smart little boss. She's my little boss. She bosses.
And how old is she?
She's 6.
Oh, 6.
Yeah. So I always wanted a girl, and I thought that'd be the easiest, and they would just love their dad. And she's been fun. She's been a fun challenge. Keeps
4
me-
or 5 kids,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, we thought we were done at 4. We did. It was the fifth. The 5th was just a surprise blessing. We're like, we didn't even know, and I didn't think my wife would do good with pregnancy. She doesn't do good with pregnancy, so I thought, man, this could be it. Like, she may not make it through the
Yeah.
pregnancy. So I felt guilty, like, man, I should have been more careful. And then our son's born, and women are just miraculous creations. Like, the fact that they can do what they do and grow
guess-
a body like that.
I
just-
guess she was used to it by then.
yeah, she is. Women are tough. They're a different kind of tough.
They're tougher than men.
Yeah, they literally, it's been proven, have a higher pain tolerance than men. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do childbirth, I don't think. Like, they go through it, and then they were designed, they just kind of forget about it, the pain afterwards. They can remember it a little bit, but it's not as, like, vivid. Otherwise, they would never have a
They'd
kid
never
ever
do it again, yeah.
Yeah, so it's cool. That's kind of the complexities of creation that make me love biology. It's like a woman's body can't just grow a person, because like they go on to do that, but then they feed the person with their body. We
Yeah.
can't make milk in a lab, but their body can take in any ingredient it wants: cookies, Coke.
And make milk.
It make milk every time, like without fail. Like, it makes milk. Like, it's miraculous. The fact that we
All
can't
of
do
them.
it. Yeah.
Not like just some of them.
Yeah.
You know, 95% of them, I guess.
Yeah. So it's cool stuff like that. Like, your body right now, like, if you were to go and donate blood, where does your new blood come from? Because your blood cells don't have they don't have a nucleus.
Yeah, where
And
does
so
it come from?
that's something I thought of when I was learning about cell division. I go, wait a minute. I donated blood and my body made new blood cells, but cell division is how new cells, like my skin cells, if I get a cut, the nucleus, all the chromosomes line up in the center of the cell.
And how did the body know how much to make?
Exactly. Well,
How did it stop at the right amount?
yeah, how did it not go, oh, we overfilled it,
Yeah.
somebody was daydreaming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about it, but where your blood comes from this is weird, your bones. I never would have thought that. Like inside your bones, your red bone marrow, it's where they make the blood, where the blood comes from. You would never look at a skeleton and think that's what makes your blood.
That's where the blood, because it's not even liquid.
Yeah, and the fact that you have a heartbeat, a pulse. If we do an ultrasound at like 5 weeks, 6 weeks, you can see a little bitty heartbeat. They don't even have bones, but they have a heartbeat. Like there's some intelligent design stuff going on that we can't explain. We can look at it, we can see it, and it's mind-boggling. Like it blows my mind. So I really do hope that somehow I can contribute to people getting fascinated with intelligent design and seeing it for what it is, and not being blinded and looking at us as like having monkey ancestors and fish ancestors. And like it, to me, like we're doing science an injustice by getting stuck in that 1800s mindset that Darwin had, where he said, if it's proven that essentially that life can be more complex than what we now know, my theory would just fall apart. And they didn't know about the cell division the way it happens perfectly, the way we see it now. They didn't know about all the cell parts, DNA. We still don't have a picture of DNA, the double helix. We don't have a picture of it. We don't have a photograph of the double helix, and that's stuff that I thought.
How small is the double helix?
Well, it's so small that when the smallest we can actually, I don't know the exact size, but when they show you the clearest picture of DNA, it just looks like a very fuzzy image of a human hair. It doesn't even look like, and that's like it's coiled, it's wrapped around. They say it coils up and all that, like those old foam cords, like it's coiled and then it's double coiled and like all to where it can pack into a cell. I mean, you got all this information.
So what's the difference between the DNA and genes?
Well,
I get that
yeah,
confused.
your genes are on your DNA, so like there's still like the code.
Spikes?
Yeah, it's like, well, that's the thing with the spike proteins and stuff that they were doing with the mRNA.
Yeah.
Because there's messenger RNA, there's ribosomal RNA. It's such a science lesson, but as a science teacher, when they were telling us about it, like, oh, we're going to give you something that uses messenger RNA, and we're going to send it into your cells, it's going to make one of your existing cells create these spike proteins. Well, what's going to happen to that cell that's doing that? Cells make copies of themselves. So when that cell copies, you're going to have two cells making spike proteins. When that cell copies, now you have more. Now you have, and it just keeps going. And so I thought instantly, like, how are they talking us into doing something that sounds like to me you're going to cause your body to become this massively spike protein machine of just spitting them out if that cell, because cells don't just go, all right, I'm going to stop doing what your instructions told me to do. No, they make copies of themselves. That's how they were designed at creation. So I think that's why there was such a rise in people who were allegedly anti-vaxxers. They weren't anti-vaxxers. They just didn't want to do what the mainstream was telling us to do, because we know what this entails. We're changing the breadth of life. When you watch cell division happen under a microscope with special dyes, you see there's spindle fibers that shoot out like Spider-Man. I mean, they shoot out from these little bitty centrosomes. They shoot out and they attach to the chromosomes. And your chromosomes are like socks. They come in pairs. So there's like a matching pair, and there's all these different matching pairs. And so they line up in the center of your cell, and you can see these spindle fibers grouping. It looks like there's two white glowing hands just grouping up, like shuffling a deck of cards or matching up socks or whatever you want to look at it like. And then when everything's matched up, it just goes, pulls it apart. And it's like, how? How does it pull it apart? What force is it using? What eyeballs do these little things have that let them see the chromosomes? How, like, it's not like this centrosome goes, all right, go that way, head left, head right. They shoot out and they guide with accurate precision, boom, and to where your skin cell, when it goes apart, each skin cell has the same amount of chromosomes. It's perfect, and it's so intelligently designed. Like, it boggles me that we could look at that and go, that lightning struck that water just right millions of years ago, and now we have that. Like, lightning can't do that. And they say, oh, well, it's a magnetic force. Magnets can't do that. Throw a bunch of magnets on a table. They're all going to stick together and stop. They're not going to pull something apart, start doing something else, and then do it. They're not going to continue that on. And like you said, your blood's going to stop when it gets to the right level.
Yeah.
It's not going to go and overfill. And they say, oh, some hormone sent that signal. How did that hormone know to do that? Like, this is we're advanced machines. We're the most advanced, complex creation out there. And we take it for granted because we don't ever actually focus on how advanced we are. Like it's cool.
We don't even have a clue, do we?
Yeah, no.
When it comes down to it, really.
Yeah, we can use big words, and I think that's the intimidating science aspect, is they like to use big words and intimidate you, like, you don't know about homologous structures and analogous structures, and you haven't studied evolution and the macro evolution, and that's like, and they start, that's what, I mean, I literally struggled in my freshman year in high school with science and biology because of the vocabulary. It's a foreign language. So you throw kids into this foreign language, they don't have time to appreciate it. They're like, I can't even learn the language first. You know, like, we need to slow it down. Biology should be taught every year. Like, you should be learning about life and the complexity of life and creation throughout the entire high school. Not
How can you
one course.
graduate from biology, right?
Yeah.
From biology class, because it's ongoing.
Yeah, it continues on. So I feel like that's one of those things we really need to focus on, that aspect of it in our schools, and have parents, saying, look, here's the evidence. Like, they'll listen to parents. They won't listen to somebody like me on YouTube, but if they can have parents coming out and saying, we're not going to come to your school if you're going to do this, they're going to have to listen. If their kids don't come to our school, we don't have a job, And so we're having to max
But boy, I don't know. It's all going to be, it's a mystery. But hey, you are one of the most intelligent people I've ever talked to.
Oh, thank you. It's not me at all.
And you're well spoken, and I really think we've not seen the last of you.
I hope not. This is really cool. This is a unique experience, man, coming down here.
I appreciate
to
it.
meet you.